Kia ora, everyone. Welcome. We've got Kylee Black with us today. Really, really excited to have her join us. I'll start us off with a karakia and then introduce Kylee, who is the guest for our EGL in Education korero today. All right, karakia te matanga. Mana kitea tēnei hui, mana kitea tēnei ropu, mana kitea tēnei whanau. Tainoa ki tēnei kaupapa. Arahina nā korero, arahina nā papai, arahina nā ture nei kia puta ai te maramatanga. Kia ora, welcome. All right, so we've got Kylee here today. I've known Kylee sort of on social media, following her and seeing all the awesome stuff she used to do. She still does, and that's how I heard of Kylee, got to know about Kylee, and then more recently we actually managed to connect because we were co-panelists. So really, really exciting to have you, Kylee. Now you have been an innovative entrepreneur, and you have been so creative in terms of everything you do, the social media presence you have. And one of the things I really love about you is you always talk about overcoming the barriers and challenges with so much positivity, enthusiasm, and zest. That is something I absolutely, absolutely love about the way you go about overcoming those barriers, Kylee. So really privileged to have you here today. I know our conversations are about enabling good lives in education. So we'll start off with a little bit about, you, introduce yourself, talk to us a bit about your education journey. But I also want to focus on, moving out of education and stepping into the community, that journey. What was that like for you? And also, what do you think is important for our youth to think when, they're preparing to step out of school and move into the community? And also for families, parents, educators, what do they need to be aware of and start thinking about when they're supporting their youth to step out into that big wide world? So, talk to us a little bit, Kylee, about yourself. You're welcome to introduce yourself further, however you like, and then tell us about your early years in the education space.
Kia ora. Thank you, Frian. I really appreciate your warm welcome and introduction. Hi, my name is Kylee Black. I'm based in the Waikato. I've been here since 2012. Before that, I was living in Taupo. I grew up in Warkworth. However, all my family is based and comes from Hawke's Bay. So whenever I talk about going home, it's always home to the Hawke's Bay. I come from a family with three siblings. I have two brothers and a sister that are all younger than me, and my mum and dad. I kind of sit actually in a slightly unusual position of being both a whānau member of a disabled person and the impact of that and being a young caregiver, and then ironically transitioning into the disabled person myself as well.
Wow.
And I think it's given me incredible insights into some of the dynamics, I guess, involved in schooling as well. I didn't grow up understanding the terminology, I guess, of disabled person outside of our limited understanding of what most the able-bodied world understands as disabled, which is a wheelchair or this, or blind or vision impairment or a wheelchair. I guess I would now have classified myself possibly as like ambulatory disabled person. Like I was up and going and moving, but I was breaking bones all the time. I fell over all the time. I had good fitness, no endurance, hearing impairment, vision impairment, and life and school wasn't necessarily very easy. However, I didn't have a lot of understanding in my world around those things either. So a lot of get over it, you're fine, harden up, like, oh, what have you done now? Like there was no language around what was wrong with me. When I hit my teens, I started encountering a whole lot of diagnoses. And I actually thought I was a freak. I mean it like this is the language I had as a teenager. I thought it was impossible to have more than one diagnosis, it's a giggle fest for me now because I was naive, but I thought I only knew other people who had like a friend who had diabetes in a discussion or like a wheelchair in a discussion. Like there was no, these are the things I navigate, or this is what depression looks like, or this is what anxiety looks like, or this is neurodiversity. You know, there was for me in my world none of that. And so I navigated my world feeling like I was different than everyone else. And I had a lot of doctors and was in and out of hospital a lot, and they just said your body works differently than other people's bodies, and we don't know why, and we don't know what that looks like. I had surgery when I was 14 to have my appendix removed, and my wound opened up 6 weeks after surgery. And it was blamed on me because and around, you know, oh, it's because you're overweight, that kind of thing. Like there wasn't the understanding that we have today. And so I was made to feel like a freak, like it was impossible. Like I got hearing aids when I was 16, scoliosis, they wanted to do surgery when I was 17. And so I just didn't understand how I didn't fit into the world, why I couldn't keep up with other kids, why I would have to nap, or why I just didn't and couldn't do what a lot of my peers could do. But I probably didn't necessarily pin all of that up against me and my body either, because I at 13, my life was kind of like thrown in the air, so to speak, because Dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so he went from like running a company, and it was international, CEO of that company, director, and he was traveling 3 months a year up all hours of the night, to not being able to go through a checkout line, jumping out of a moving vehicle, and not being able to be out of a darkened room and needing 24 care support. But we also didn't have any supports in place. There was no home support, there was no personal care, there was no help within the family unit. We're just made to navigate it. And so I became a caregiver, helping my mum with my siblings and helping look after my dad. You know, like he gets stuck in the back of a supermarket, he'd get lost. He didn't know how to get out, and you'd see him carrying like this, like in the corner back bridge section, because he didn't know how to get out. So you'd put your hand, Dad, I've got your hands on each shoulder. Dad, close your eyes. Dad, look at the ground. I'm going to walk you out of here. We're going to walk out of here. Dad, it's okay. Dad, you've got this, you know? And so school didn't really fit into that picture super well. I wasn't keeping up with school. I had transitioned from intermediate in a small school into college in a large scale school. Because I had a late enrollment, I actually ended up they had a series of classes. I don't know if they still do it. You've got like the middle stream classes, then you've got a high stream class, then you've got a low stream class, then you've got like what I called the no hopers class. Like it was a class they didn't want to deal with. Which is not fair, but that's I just felt like you know, they spent a lot of time. That's a really unfair statement. But because we weren't, and it isn't, but there was a lot of like just managing things and managing us. And I ended up with a lot of bullying and and I wanted to do the work. And because home was difficult, I threw myself into my work. Which then of course you become a teacher's pet, you know. But I wasn't learning, I wasn't interested, and I didn't want to keep turning up. And so when I ended up in hospital for that 6-week period with my surgery and came back, I said, Mum, I'm not going, and if you send me back, I'm going to run away every day. Like, I'm not doing it, I'm not interested. And I'd been trying to beg Mum to homeschool me for a while at that point. And so Mum finally agreed, which was great. I ended up doing 2 years homeschooling papers in a year, because I was helping mum and dad. I was helping mum in the household in the daytime, but at night and early morning, I get up and throw myself into my work, and I loved it. But I didn't complete any of the school C or exams or anything like that.
Yeah.
However, at 15, 16, I managed to get into doing a television program degree, or certificate, sorry. Yeah, and so moved out of home, did that, and then went into, in the next year I did a thing called a diploma in film and first so it's a certificate in film and television production, and then the year following that was a diploma in communication and expressive arts. Yeah, so that's kind of a bit of my the schooling side, but we're 20 years on from that now, so there's a lot that's changed, you know.
Oh, look, I mean, there's so much. It's been such a journey for you, hasn't it? With ups and downs and twists and turns. And as you were speaking, I kept thinking there were so many points where, flexibility and adaptation and accommodations could have supported you.
Absolutely.
And could have made life so much easier for you. But it just wasn't there, was there?
I couldn't hear in school. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I couldn't see what was on the board. I didn't probably have the navigation to understand that at that point either.
Yeah. And the other thing, that whole bit you mentioned about you didn't want to be at school because it just wasn't working for you.
No.
And that's so true. There's so many kids who end up in school, it's not working for them. And then when things don't change and things are not responsive and, accommodating for them, all it does, it makes things harder. And it then, of course, for a lot of kids, it starts off with, the challenges with behavior and all sorts of other issues. But
behavior is a form of communication, right?
Yes.
And if you're not listening to me and you're not hearing me, then all I've got left is that.
Can I ask something, Kylie? I know you've said you've had such a, I would say, quite a rough journey, so to speak, in that space. Tell me a bit, where does your enthusiasm and positivity still come from? Because you still move ahead with that enthusiasm and positivity. So what has kept you going despite all these barriers that you've faced in terms of finding opportunities? You've moved out of education and then you've sort of navigated your way through life.
And then I fell flat on my face.
I know. And what were those opportunities? How did you go about accessing those opportunities? Because school didn't set you up, school didn't prepare you, they didn't support with a transition or anything. So how did you go about it? What helped you?
I was really lucky to get into a program where I moved out of home at that point in time and into a college living situation. I'm not able to go into it. That year wasn't easy at all and set up a whole lot more trauma. But I'm really grateful for it. And then moved away the next year into my own. I look at like kids 17 now and I'm like, I know my sister turned 17 and I'm like heck, you're moving out of home on your own into your own place. Not a chance. And she was like, not a chance. I was absolutely fiercely determined to be as independent as possible, as early as possible. Did that help me? I don't think so. I don't know. It's not something I talk about a lot in my journey today because it doesn't come up a whole lot. I completely burnt out and completely became really unwell. Everything caught up with me. My health caught up with me. I was really unwell with my gut, and I actually ended up spending 13 months in Australia in a residential care facility that I'm really grateful now. New Zealand didn't have the supports in place, and I was able to get into this program in Australia where it was free to attend, and spent 13 months there. relearning basically a lot of the skills and the strengths that I needed. I was such a broken kid. I wasn't the girl you see today where I can speak up and advocate and use my voice. Yeah, so that, like what we speak out of our mouths, our ears hear, and it feeds our soul. So learning to tell myself the truth, learning to reprogram my brain and the truths. But yeah, I was completely beaten down by the system and wanted nothing to do with anyone and anything. And I'm really lucky that my mum stepped in and fought hard for me, kept me alive, and then helped me access that care. And I thought coming back from Australia that cool, I'm in a good place now. Like, I couldn't sit on a normal seat. Like even when I was over there, for like classes and stuff, I had to be on a beanbag, with my spine. I didn't have the same endurance. There was a whole lot of things that still made me different, but I came back thinking I'm in a good place now. I'm going to make it work. And then, of course, my health deteriorated. So I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder, and that's the glue that holds our bodies together. And so it gets worse on often at puberty and then your early 20s. And so I had a kickboxing injury where I tore and damaged one of the nerves, and that kickstarted a thing called complex regional pain syndrome, which kickstarted some other things and big, long, convoluted names. But basically, I'd got a job, I'd been able to get into work, supporting people with disabilities. I loved it. I could only work part-time. I slept between shifts. I came home and slept in the afternoon before I could do an evening activity, that kind of thing. I'd moved back home with my parents. And then I found myself pretty quickly bed-bound. I say bound because I was bound. I could only move my right hand. I'd lost full use of my left-hand side and partial use of both of my legs. Really severe pain, couldn't be enclosed, couldn't sit myself up. The nerve injury meant that I couldn't put any stretch on the nerve whatsoever. So it made life quite difficult. However, going from having fought for my life and coming back in a place of now being, I guess, mentally resilient, physically now in a difficult place, I knew that if I was going to come through this, I knew that if I fell into a pit of depression at this point, that the battle from here would be 10 times harder, And so I needed to be really intentional around how I used skill sets and tools I put in place to set myself up to stay connected into community. I have fought my entire life to be valued and accepted and part of community, and have constantly been shut out, have constantly been pushed out the door or left behind, or told that I'm too much, I'm too needy, it's too complicated, it's too difficult, it's too this, it's too that, it's too all of it. And it's exhausting. And yeah. And so I looked at myself, and actually it's at this point that it changed. That it was a pivot point for me that changed the entirety of the rest of my life. All right.
Yeah.
I asked myself a simple question that's now landed in everything from that point forward for me. I looked at myself. Everyone was telling me what I couldn't do and what I didn't have and how awful things were and everything that was wrong. But no one stopped to try and find what I could do or what was possible or what could be done. Yeah. And everyone was baby men. Everyone, and I looked at myself, and I've always had mum and dad strong support behind me. But I looked at my hand and I went, well, okay, what have I got? What can I do? What do I have? I have access to my right hand. I have access to a laptop. I can see the lake, the sky, and the sun. Okay, and what's going to keep me in a good place? Well, I need to find connection. Okay, how do I find meaning and purpose in a body where I now have no use of my body? I can't leave my body, and I'm stuck in my brain, and I need help for absolutely everything. And life was really difficult, and really severe pain in and out of hospital. And so my brain became my escape from the world that I was living in. And so I went, I've got access to my right hand. I have access to the internet. What can I do with that? And so I decided to make it my mission to encourage other people and make it my job to send messages of encouragement to others, because I might not be able to change my circumstances, but if I can do something that helps you in your circumstances, then it changes my circumstances anyway, because it gets me out of my world, but it gave me a mission and a reason and a purpose for being, and it got me out of my head. And I really hated it. And you guys will all know this. When people would come up to me and like, oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm sick, I'm disabled, I don't work, I'm whatever. It's like conversation killer, like birds start chirping, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and this is where starting language around flipping the script starts to come in, okay?
Yeah.
Because without changing my circumstances, okay, at all, I was a girl stuck in a bed. I couldn't do anything for myself. Everyone saw everything I can't do. No one's talking about what I possibly still could do. And how do I work a pathway out of that? Because the reality is that nothing's going to change without small steps, because there weren't big steps in that process. But little things and little moments make a difference. So I started writing a blog because my flatmate, my best friend, came to me and said, burst in tears, and she said, you didn't tell me you're terminal. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, why didn't I hear it from you first? And I'm like, because it's not word to hear. But Chinese whispers happen. And so I started taking control of my narrative and allowing myself to be my person. And so I had to write updates and put things out there for people, but I chose what went out there. And then when people said, oh, how's it going, and want all the detail, I'm like, look, I've got a blog, you can read it on the blog, but other than that, I'm Kylee right now. And it gave my family time to go read it on the blog, or my friends, if they heard something and they were like, actually, you can read it directly from Kylie's words and it's on her page. So it gave us control of our own narrative. But I started encouraging people, and then I was trying to rehab this hand. I get really bored really, really easily. Don't ask me to do set repetitive exercises. I don't see the point in it. It just doesn't make sense to me. However, if you ask me to stick a sticker in my hand and make a book and make this hand work, I am so committed. So we started sending encouragement books around New Zealand and then around the world, because I worked with who came to me. So we sent, and then people started sending packages to send stuff in the packages to go out. So I was doing it all from my bed. And then I was like, oh, this is getting complicated. I think I might need to set up a website. And so Spirit Spark Plugs was started. But if I go back to the birds chirping for a moment, right? So birds are chirping. What do you do? I don't work. I'm sick. I'm disabled. In a discussion, no one wants to talk to you. Not changing that situation, not changing the circumstances or the reality. I said, they said, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I run an organisation, or I run a space where I encourage other people who are homebound, hospital bound, or struggling with messages of encouragement. Nothing has changed about my circumstances. People lean in and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Tell me more. How can I be involved? That's incredible. What are you doing? So we started okay, so today we've got social media. We've got TikTok. You see people living in hospitals, living at home, people hidden. At that point in time, no one knew there was a young girl bedbound at 58 Harvey Street, except the little lady who looked up and saw our light on, and then one day asked my dad. But I was hidden from the world. No one saw how many young people there were behind the scenes. So why do I do what I do now? It all comes from a point of exclusion, actually, and having fought the barriers. I managed to get able to move out of home. I moved up to Hamilton and then relapsed again with my disease. 6 weeks after moving up here, ended up in hospital for 4 months and then 2 months, and then had to go back, and then was transferred into a neuro rehab in Hamilton. At that point, I broke my mother's heart, probably shattered it to pieces. Because I was incredibly unwell. And of course, any mother with her daughter struggling and going through incredible levels of trauma and dystonic attacks wants to pull her kid home, right? So she was keen to see me be able to come home. I knew at that point that I was a dollar figure. And so if I moved home, I wasn't going to have the support hours and supports and back in place. But if I said yes to being transferred to like a nursing home or a rest home, I'm like, Mum, they're not going to want to keep me there long term, surely. And so I said to mum, I'd rather move into the nursing home than come home.
That must have been hard.
I think it was really hard for her. I think driving away, I ended up in a locked neuro brain rehab because the whole place was just locked, full stop. But she said she bawled her eyes every time leaving me there and walking away. Yeah.
And it's hard.
But
Really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But had I moved home to Taupo at that point, there was no chance. I said to mum, I'm like, Mum, I have one life and one chance. My circumstances aren't changing. Life isn't changing. Like, this isn't a dress rehearsal. I have to work out how to make this life work right for me because it's just passing. Time's passing. I have to work out how to make this work for me. And I had amazing community here. See, when I was in Taupo, if you could do the outdoor adventurous stuff, awesome. Like the culture is running, biking, hiking, swimming, kickboxing, dancing, all of that. The culture in Hamilton is different. The culture is going for walks, going to the movie, meeting at the park, going shopping, having a coffee. You have to seek out the adventurous stuff. Yeah. In Taupo, my friends had to meet me on my level. They weren't excluding me because they were choosing to exclude me. I couldn't participate in the things they were doing.
Yeah.
Here, I can participate in everything that's being done, and there's a strong disability community, but you have to seek out the other stuff. So I managed to get back into my flat and then was under support agencies and then was really lucky to be one of the first onto the EGL demonstration in Hamilton, but that was a shit fight too. Sorry, language. That was not easy and a lot of advocacy. And I've lost my voice over the years many times. I've been in positions of abuse under support agencies with support staff. And at one point, I was desperately trying to get connected into community. I went through 2 pages of support organizations trying to get connected into community. And everybody told me, oh, but you had taxi vouchers, don't you?
Oh.
Can't you just use those? And I'm like, it's still $35 one way. That's still a $70 round trip. I'm like, mate, most of the people you coming have to pass by my driveway. Is there not someone who could pick me up on their way in? They went, but we don't do that. And I'm like, but you have a database. You know where people live. You know who comes. Could you not make a phone call? They're like, oh, no, that's not what we do. But if you come along and get a taxi, then maybe you can connect with people here and then find someone that can give you a lift. And I was like, but I don't have that money. Like, I've got that, like, that's one event once. That's my entire month's budget to get to an emergency doctor's appointment. Yeah. Like, and so it was just, I felt like a prisoner in my home for a really long time. And my friends would tell you I was really angry. My friends have shared over the years the impact of the before and after, before EGL and after. Yeah. And how it wasn't easy. I was home, I was in my own home. Yeah. But I was a prisoner in my home. I had someone turning up to get me out of bed, and then someone turning up. Yeah, that's about it. Someone turning up in the morning to help get me up and out of bed. But then what?
And that impacts your sense of identity, your well-being, your confidence as well, significantly, doesn't it? Because you know you're not in control, you're not in charge. You don't have the choice, and your voice is not being sort of heard. Kylee, I just want to go back to one of the things you mentioned. You mentioned how you ended up in burnout, in those late teenage years, and when you stepped out. And it's something very similar that I hear from parents or young adults, either late teens or sort of early 20s, who have finished schooling, and they often talk about how they've become disconnected. They don't want to go out. They don't want to do anything. And often when we sort of go into more of those conversations about what was life like at school, and initially parents will say things like, our school was fine, we managed it, we pushed through. I'm like, no, no, tell me if, they had a best friend, a best teacher that they loved, a subject they loved, and it's not there. They're like, no, no, it was hard, but we pushed through. And I think that pushing through sometimes really gets to us, doesn't it? Because when you keep pushing through over the years, at some point you're going to break down. And I think it's so important for everybody, whether it's educators, parents, or are neurodivergent or disabled people themselves, to realize that you can't keep pushing through. And I really liked what you said about that. You moved from, one city to another to find community that was suitable for you,
Mm.
and that was going to be more accessible, going to allow more participation for you. And that intentionality really needs to be there. I'm going through, so my boys are now ready to move out of school, and we're trying to plan for their transition. And every time I talk about, I want, opportunities for them in the mainstream space to do things they like, and, let's find those spaces. Invariably, the conversation after the meeting keeps coming back to the day program or a special place or a this or that, and it just keeps coming back. And I think sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, am I going to have to do this alone on my own, or will I have the people who are paid to do supports and transitions and, plan alongside you, ever going to sort of, come on board? And it's really hard to find communities that are accessible. What, in your opinion, has worked? Because this is one of the key principles with, EGL, relationship building, and, mainstream first,
So I get
and
all like excited, right?
ordinary life outcomes.
Yeah.
How? Because obviously you have to be really intentional about it. But
Mm.
what, in your opinion, has worked for you? What has helped? I know you are in the sort of, EGL space, and that helped you. But what were the actual little bits and pieces that really helped shift things along for you?
Okay, do you want a one-word answer and then a longer word answer?
Yes, please.
Okay, the one-word answer is community. End, beginning and end is community, and finding and building collective community. How easy is that? It's like banging your head against a brick wall, mate.
Yes. Yes.
Honestly, if we touch back to what you were saying with like mum would have a really different conversation with you than the one I'm having, actually. Mum found it really, really hard, and she pulled us through by the skin of her teeth, bleeding. And I often say, it's different space. I'll touch base quickly. It might resonate with some of you guys. Often used to say growing up, head injuries like throwing a hand grenade through the front door, running, bolting the door at the front and running. Everyone inside was left bleeding and wounded. There wasn't one person in our household that wasn't affected and impacted by the seismic changes that took place. Regardless of them being seismic changes, I think for a lot of us, like, no one saw what was happening at home. No one saw the reality. And we were dismissed a lot and gaslit a lot and told that it's not that bad. Oh, come on, it's not like that. Oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, I don't believe that. I mean, I remember one talking, Mum, I didn't talk. Mum said, talk with your youth group leader. And I talked with her, and she's like, I can't believe you're spreading lies everywhere. And Mum, I said, Mum said I can talk to you. And she hung up the phone on Mum and said, I don't believe it, and kicked me out of the house. Like, it's just hard. It's hard. It's hard, and it's hard yakka, and I don't want to underestimate for whānau either the impact of navigating that space. I can't talk fully to the whānau space. What I can talk about is being the disabled person now, and my partner couldn't talk on a partner perspective. I was told for years I would never have a partner. Who would want to take that on? No one would want to take that on. Well, he'll stand up to anybody that tries and says that these days. But honestly, there's a quote, there's two quotes I live by, which is, alone we get so far, together we get so much further.
Absolutely.
Um, and another one, and they're my own quotes, but another one which is one step at a time, and soon enough, when we look back, the steps turn into miles. And each intentional little step gets us further to um, where we want to be if we make those small decisions. So, like, I now mentor a lot of young people who are in situations and circumstances similar to mine and very different than mine. But I was talking with one young girl, she wants to do a dog grooming course. Now, most of the time, she's really complex unwell, is in bed a lot, in and out of hospital a lot. And that's an awesome goal to have, right? But like, what can she do now that gives her the intention and the feel of working towards those steps?
Mm.
So I said, because she's like, oh, but I can't do this and I can't do this. And but what about this and what about that? And I'm like, so even if you watch half an hour of dog grooming videos a day, you're learning from that. And that gets you a step further as well, and that's something she can feel she's accomplished every day, regardless of what she's been able to do, or going to the library and getting a book out, or looking on the internet. But for me, it's a real isolating world out there, really isolating. So how do we start creating networks where we champion and get behind one another, where we start to create the opportunities we want to see and the outcomes we want to see? How do we network together? We have recently, at the beginning of the year, for example, so I run Kylee and Co today. Kylee and Co is about making things accessible and showing what's out there and changing the idea on accessibility, that it can be fun and funky and fashionable and work and make sense, and it doesn't have to be boring and sterile and dull and transparent or an old person sippy cup when I'm only in my 30s.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
something bright and fun and that engages people.
Yeah.
I spent years in and out of hospital more recently as well. And now I've got a line that goes to my heart. I get all my hydration, and I have a feeding tube that goes to my stomach, my small bowel, and an ostomy. So life's changed a lot over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the year, we actually set up a service. We've now set up a service provision agency led by disabled people.
Yeah. Nice.
To try and support people to get the supports that they want, and do a lot of also mentoring behind the scenes and small business support. And when I started Kylee and Co in between 2020 and 2022, I couldn't find other disabled businesses and disabled led businesses and a space to connect. I'm like, cool. So there's like youth in business, there's men's business, women's business, like after five business, like all these. But I'm like, where do I talk to other disabled people? Because
Yeah.
I couldn't find it easily, and I wasn't getting good business advice from people who didn't understand what it was like to be in situations such as mine. Yeah. And so we started Disabled Business Owners and Enterprise, and we now have over 500 members in that Facebook group. And we have a monthly call on a Monday, first Monday of every night between 7:30 and 9, learning from one another and going, how did you get started? How did you do it? What did you do? How do we get behind one another? How do we stop all relearning and doing the same shit over and over again? Because it's stupid. Like, why do I have to learn the same lessons the six of you on my screen have already learned, when if we come together, maybe I can platform off those, and then you learn from mine, and then alone we get so far and together we get so much further.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is fabulous. With my kids, it's been really about 3 years now, 4 years. I've been thinking in my head, going on about, what is life gonna look like for my children? How are we gonna sort of transition? And when I first started, of course, I was looking, because I've always been an advocate for inclusion. I kept looking at really sort of traditional, what job will they fit, and what work can they do, what volunteering can they do. As sort of I kept thinking, I thought we don't have to do things just the way they're done. We can be creative, and it's been so interesting hearing from others. And I'm not a very creative person, so I don't come up with these ideas on my own. But when I hear other people talk, this is what they're doing. I think, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm sure my, older son can do this. I'm sure my,
Mhm.
middle son can love this. And so I've been now starting to think that I don't need something that's, traditional, typical. I've got to think outside the box. And also, I have to look at what's going to work for them because I've got one who loves the structure and loves
Mm.
all the, routine repetition. I've got another one who's really sort of driven by how much energy do I have today and how much can I cope and am I in a, good mood to do this or not? And if I can't cope with it today, then I'm not doing it and I can't push it. And so I have to think outside the box and find those actually create those opportunities. Because I think, from what you've said, it really is about finding the gaps,
That's
finding the needs, and then creating those opportunities, not just looking around for them. Because if we sit looking around, I don't think I'll ever find anything for my children. And yeah, you've just got to create it.
that's why we started Kylie and Co. I couldn't find the products that I needed, and I was living in hospital at that point in time. And then people started going, "Where did you find that?" I've been looking for that for 20 years. I had time to kill. I was found out. I realized I was good at finding stuff, and my partner helped me build. And my partner's family, my mother-in-law, was just like, "You're really good at connecting with people.
Yeah.
I've got all this stuff I can't do markets with right now. When you're up to it, put this stuff in markets. You connect with the people, you sell the stuff." And then with COVID, we found a product. And because I was looking for solutions for me, then I started finding them for others. And we've got 1,500 products on the website now, but they've all been built in collaboration with community. So I don't just get products. People come to me and say, "I'm trying to find a solution that helps me with ABC 1, 2, 3. Do you know anything?" And we work with them. But my favorite thing in the whole world is creating space. So I run Kylie and Co. entirely. I've built the entire website, my part of it, on my phone. I only use a phone. I can't hold my hands. For anyone that can't see, my wrists don't stand up, so that I can't hold my arms up in front of me or my hands in front of a computer without the bones dislocating. And I can't sit up for long periods of time. So we have a hospital bed in our lounge, and I do all my work from there. Yeah. Can I share I don't know what the time is. Can I share something really exciting with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because this is actually where all of like the story we've spoken starts to like amalgamate together.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're now working in the transition space, but supporting. I love working with people in more complex health situations as well, where people tell you it's not possible, you can't do it. How do you? And here's a term. This is a Kylie term, okay? People look at me like I have 4 heads, but I'm going to strongly stand by it, okay? My favorite thing to do is what I call pre-employment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everyone in employment processes, they talk about, 3 to 6 months or 6 months to 12 months max. Yeah. Don't work for my community. Okay. And probably don't work necessarily for a lot of your communities either. I'm on a phone. Probably doesn't work a lot for your communities either. For me, you're looking at 2 years plus. So I commit for the long term, right? But one of my favorite things is we work with young people who have tried to get jobs, tried to get work, hasn't worked, have had good, accessible employers until their disability impacts their ability to do the job. And then they're like, well, this is the job and this is what's needed. So you need to do this in a discussion, right? They come to me, they sit on my couch. A lot of them have had autism, depression, anxiety, that kind of thing. They sit up on my couch and they're like, I just have to understand, I'm never going to work a job. I'm never going to be able to work. And I just have to understand that I'll never work. And that's just that. End of discussion. It's never going to happen. I just got to get over the fact that it's never going to happen. And my favorite thing to do is go, really? I don't think it's that it's never going to happen. It never can happen and nothing's possible. Maybe that you're looking in the wrong environment or zone. I'm like, you have a condition that means you can't stand up and you're trying to work in a kitchen. Really? That's really going to work. And you can't do nothing, but you can lay on the couch on your phone. Me too. And I said, the thing is, people look at me and like, how do you do it all? And how do you hold all these things? And I'm like, I don't. I do it in community, and we've done it in community and collaboration with others. Um, and I said, my favorite thing is, what do you do that you love? What are you good at? What are your strengths?
Yeah.
What is your capacity?
Yeah.
But it's starting small, right? When I started out, I started by messaging people on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or sending messages. It has to start small. But I say to people, I'm like, why don't you? We've got an open door policy here. Okay. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so why don't you just see about coming and hanging out 2 days a week? Because does anyone even know if you can get out the door twice a week for 2-hour periods at a time? Because no one asks that. You go through a CV process, and then you're expected to know what you want to do and what you're good at and what you might like to do, and then you're committed to a job. But like, I've had people tell me, even now, oh, well, if you miss 2 meetings, you're obviously not committed. You obviously don't want it. And I don't want to muck around with people that aren't interested or don't have the commitment or don't want it. So, I'm out. And I'm like, did you ask why they missed the meeting or what the barrier was? Or I get things wrong all the time. And it's not because I'm not interested or not passionate or not committed. It's because my barriers are such that I didn't quite have it. I wasn't quite there, or it ended up in hospital. Or did you ask if I'd been up all night vomiting? Or did you ask if my support staff didn't turn up and I had no way to get there? Like, let's have the conversations there. But I'm like, come and hang out 2 days a week, sit on the couch, on your phone, do nothing. Just come and be part of the environment. There was this one girl coming in, and she came in with her mum. Her mum did the talking, and she's committed. She wanted to do it. So she was catching the bus to us, coming in, sitting on the couch, 2 hours up and left. No one made her interact really, but we engaged her. We included her as much as she had capacity for it. But the full capacity that she had was simply being there. Yeah. That was everything. Everything. Full stop. That was her entire capacity, and that was okay. Look, if she missed a week, it wasn't on me. There was no retribution. There was no disappointment. There was no letting me down, because it's her journey on her pathway. Yeah. Now we open the doors as she's ready to have them opened. So one day, probably 8 weeks later, we're sitting in the lounge, and the lounge works around her, lounge works around her. And she added something to the conversation. Well, we about all fell over. She came back the next week. She stood up, walks over, and she's like, so what are you guys doing anyway? And then she's like, well, could I help with that? And we're like, sure you can. And that led a pathway. And that's the exciting thing. We've got another girl that was hanging out with us. She's been hanging out for a long time. And she said, oh, I want to do some volunteering with you, like actual, like proper come and not just hang out, but can I do some volunteering? So I said, sure. So she'd come up, lay on the couch, lay on the bed. And her favorite thing, she decided, was to take the stickers off products, because she loves it. She loves just that intensive, like de-sticker products and things that we had coming in. And so we gave it to her. Anyway, halfway through the day, and she'd have her headphones on. Halfway through the day, she'd throw the blankets over her head and have a nap while the house worked around her. Then she'd get up and continue doing things. And then at the end of the day, we all watch a movie together. Her pathway, her journey, her process. Give me big picture. Give me big picture. Give me big vision. Get me to bring people on board and carry people with me. I can do that. I can do that really well. The whole know your strengths.
Yeah.
Ask me to sort out fine detail or really tasky, detailed admin task. I think I might cry. Okay. And she could see this day. We've got a pin collection. I had tried. It's not my strength. It's not my strength. So she looked at me and she's like, can you, she's like, those pins? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you were doing my head in. And I'm like, okay. She's like, leave it with me. I'm like, all right. She's like, I need 24 hours. I said, you're on. And she comes in the next day. Honestly, I came out because she came early before I was up, and she'd had them all laid out. She had all the containers laid out. She'd worked out exactly, because there was complicated things like pricing and categories, but the categories had different price products in it. So how do you make, oof.
Yeah.
So she worked it all out. She had category names. She'd worked out how they fit in. She'd worked out how to price it all out. And I'm just flabbergasted. And she's like, the pins are mine. And I'm like, what? She's like, I want full control of the pins moving forward as my job. I mean, you're on. So I don't touch them. Anyway, fast forward 6 or 7 months. I said to her, I said, do you want to talk about some work, or I'd like to look at paying you for work? Because I'd asked her multiple times, and every time she said no, flat out hard no, not happening ever, won't even take really a koha, because she said no, because the minute I get paid, there's expectation on me. Expectation means I have to produce, and then I've got pressure, and then it's too much, and then I fall apart because I'm not doing it how it works for me, because she loved being a part of it and engaging in it and being part. And she said it changed her mental health space of what's the point? There's nothing, to being, she's like, Kylee, I actually look forward to every week, and every Wednesday I look forward to Wednesdays, and I've got meaning and I've got purpose and I make a difference now, and I know that I help you. And she's phenomenal for me. And that's the thing, is it's doing it with community. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all together. My whole team with me know that. But she came to, so I talked to her and she's like, no way, hard, flat, no, never happening, volunteer only. Anyway, a month ago, she approaches us. She's like, so she dropped a few hints, subtle hints about maybe wanting to try some admin work or do something. But was thinking, she's like, Kylee, and I'm like, what? She's like, I'm getting bored. In life, I think I can do more, and I think I have more to give. I said, okay. Anyway, a month ago, she goes, she asked me for a meeting, and she's like, so I've been thinking. She's like, yes. She's like, I don't like the pins anymore. She's like, yeah, no, I don't like the pins, but I'd really like to try some admin. And I think I've been watching you guys do the admin and the tasks, and I know I'm really good at admin, and she knows I'm terrible at it. And she's like, I want a job.
No.
She's like, can I have a job?
No.
And I don't know if you guys know about a program called Mainstream First. It's a really well underutilized team. Okay. It's really well underutilized, and it's perfect for small businesses or businesses starting out. Okay. Mainstream First gives a disabled person 80% of their wages covered for the first 6 months and 50% for the next 6 months. That is massive leverage you guys have to try and get your person into a job. I don't know why it's used more. We found out recently, because we use this program. We found out recently you can have a maximum of 3 Mainstream First employees in any 12-month period.
That's through MSD, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. No one talks about it. And they'll put the supports in place. So we have a $1,500 office chair, customized built office chair for one of our staff, because that's what they need to do the job. And so there are things like that out there, but our favorite thing is moving people through opportunities and bouncing them around. And if they want a job with us, we're working towards that. There's opportunities to work with Clipboard, but it's also opportunities outside of us to integrate people into other opportunities that they want to work towards as well.
And I think what you've shared, Kylee, really emphasizes the need to be absolutely intentional in terms of relationship building, networking, and doing it in the mainstream community, because you have to step, outside just the smaller spaces, I guess, that you are used to, that you're comfortable in, because until you step out and you try a few new things, you will not know what you really enjoy or what you like or what potential is there or what matches your needs and sort of, capacity. So it's really, really important that we encourage people to step out of that comfort zone, but at their own pace, like you say.
Here's a question for you, and I'm speaking over you. I'm so sorry. Here's a question for you, and it's something that grinds my gears, right? We so much just talked about, and there's a whole lot of other spills I could go down, and we don't call our team I don't have support staff or caregivers. I call my team the crew because every single person in life needs people behind them in their crew to be alive, function. You do, we all do. That's a social side tangent. The thing is we talk about so much disabled community and disabled people and I've been building some documents and resources recently around like events and what's happening in the community. But if we just stay in disabled spaces, we're never going to integrate into community. We have to be in community spaces to see it be community full stop, not community and disabled people. And the more we push for community and being a part of things and integrating into those different spaces, then, that's where full inclusion happens.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I do my work at 2 a.m. in the morning sometimes because that's what works for me.
Yeah.
And it's about finding what works for your person, what works for you, and then how do we collectively build on that, champion and support one another, because we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
I can't do it alone. Can't do any of my life alone, actually. But actually, sometimes I wonder if that's a strength as well, because I can't do life alone, I have to do it with people. That means I do it with community, and that means I have to do it with community, and that's a gift, actually, because I get to do life with really cool people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Look, it's been absolutely fabulous having you come along and share your journey and, all those little insights that are so critical and key to support our youth, as they move out and sort of, inhabit those community spaces. It's so, so valuable. So look, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. What I'm going to do is I'll close us with a karakia and then pause recording. If anyone wants to stay, ask any questions, you're welcome to, okay? So, karakia whakamutunga. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Haumie hui e taiki.
Thank you.
Amine.
Kia ora. Thank you so much.
Kia ora.